There is a part of you that remains hidden, concealed not only from the world, but also from your own awareness. This part contains everything you have denied, repressed, or refused to see. It is your shadow, not just your flaws and weaknesses, but also undiscovered treasures, unrealized potentials, entire aspects of your being that have been banished to the depths. Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human psyche, observed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The shadow is not merely something to be feared or avoided, it is the gateway to wholeness. When we turn toward it with courage and compassion, something extraordinary begins to happen. Have you ever wondered why you keep falling into the same self-destructive patterns? Why you react disproportionately to certain people or situations? Why you feel an inexplicable emptiness, even when your external life seems perfect? The answer lies in the shadow. What I am about to share is not a magic formula or a quick fix. It is a path, one Jung called individuation, the process of integrating the fragmented parts of the self to achieve psychic wholeness. It is deep, sometimes painful work, but infinitely transformative. When Jung said, "Do this for 30 days and you will be unrecognizable," he was not offering an empty promise of instant transformation. He was pointing to a profound truth. When we begin to consciously work with our shadow, when we commit to this inner journey day after day, a metamorphosis occurs at the most fundamental level of being. Over the next few minutes, I will guide you through the principles of shadow work from a Jungian perspective, not as superficial techniques, but as a map for one of the most meaningful journeys a human being can undertake, the journey home to oneself. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. It requires courage, radical honesty, and a willingness to see what we would rather ignore. But for those who persist, the rewards are immeasurable. Authenticity, personal power, liberated creativity, and a deeper connection with yourself and others. The question is not whether you have a shadow. We all do. The question is, are you ready to meet yours? The shadow is not merely an abstract psychological concept, but a lived reality that influences every aspect of our existence. Jung noted that the shadow is that hidden, repressed, often inferior and guilty personality, whose tendencies extend all the way back to the realm of our animal ancestors. To understand the shadow, we must first grasp how it forms. From childhood, we learn which aspects of ourselves are acceptable and which are not. The approved traits become part of our persona, the social mask we present to the world. The rejected traits, however, do not disappear. They are relegated to the unconscious, forming what Jung called the shadow. The shadow contains everything we deny in ourselves: anger, envy, laziness, lust, greed, but also unrealized creative potentials, undeveloped talents, and qualities we have not allowed ourselves to express. As Jung wrote, in the shadow we find not only the petty sins and weaknesses, but also the best part of ourselves that never matured. But here is the paradox of the shadow. The more we neglect it, the more powerful it becomes. Repressed contents do not remain passive in the unconscious. They seek expression. When denied, they emerge in distorted forms, as compulsive behaviors, projections onto others, disturbing dreams, or even physical illness. Projection is how the shadow first reveals itself. What irritates or fascinates us most in others often reflects unrecognized aspects of ourselves. As Jung observed, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That person you find unbearably selfish? That colleague whose arrogance enrages you? They are mirrors, reflecting parts of yourself you do not want to see. The process of individuation, the path to psychic wholeness, requires that we confront our shadow. Not to eliminate it, which would be impossible and undesirable, but to consciously integrate it into our personality. This integration does not mean giving free rein to all shadow impulses, but recognizing them, understanding them, and channeling them constructively. When Jung suggested doing this work for 30 consecutive days, he was pointing to the need for sustained commitment. Shadow work is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of self-exploration. It is like digging a well. Each day you must go a little deeper, removing another layer of earth until you finally reach the crystalline waters of the depths. The first days may seem fruitless, as if you are merely removing dry soil. But around the 10th or 15th day, you will begin to feel moisture, signs that you are approaching something vital. And then, perhaps on the 20th or 25th day, the first drop of water will appear. By the 30th day, you will have opened a channel to the underground waters of your own being. This is the transformation Jung promised, not a superficial change in behavior or personality, but a rebirth from the depths. As he himself wrote, the meeting with oneself is one of the most unpleasant encounters. But if we avoid this meeting, we have no chance of encountering another. Life, in its mysterious wisdom, constantly offers us mirrors. Every person who evokes a strong emotional reaction in us, whether positive or negative, carries a message from the depths of our own psyche. Jung understood this deeply when he observed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Shadow work begins with this simple but profound recognition. Your most intense reactions are your greatest teachers. That disproportionate irritation you feel when your colleague brags, that corrosive envy when you see a friend's success, that harsh judgment of someone you consider morally inferior. These are invitations, portals to neglected parts of yourself. During the first 10 days of this 30-day work, dedicate yourself to simply observing your projections. Do not try to change or correct them yet. Just notice them with heightened awareness. As Jung taught, what is not brought to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. See your reactions not as truths about others, but as reflections of truths about yourself that have yet to be integrated. Keep a shadow journal. In it, record daily. Which people triggered intense emotional reactions in you? What was the exact nature of your emotional response? What specific quality in that person provoked the reaction? Where might that same quality exist in you, even subtly or disguised? This process is not mere confession or catharsis. It is psychic archaeology, a careful excavation of the buried contents of your soul. As Jung warned, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Let me illustrate with an example. Imagine a man who is deeply irritated by his teenage son's weakness. The boy prefers art to sports. His irritation is disproportionate, leading to constant conflict. In shadow work, this man might recognize that his anger reflects his own inner conflict. Perhaps he himself sacrificed artistic inclinations to meet paternal expectations of masculinity. Upon recognizing this, something remarkable happens. The projection, once automatic, begins to dissolve. Where there was once only judgment, understanding emerges, not just of the other, but of oneself. As Jung observed, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Projections also operate in our admirations and fascinations. That person whose charisma enchants you. That artist whose creative freedom you secretly envy. They, too, reflect dormant potentials in you. Jung called this the golden shadow, positive qualities we do not recognize in ourselves and thus project onto others. A recurring pattern I have observed in my therapeutic work is how often we criticize in others what we secretly fear in ourselves. The woman who harshly judges other women for their sexuality may be repressing her own desires. The man who condemns others' greed may be denying his own ambition. As you progress in this work over the days, you will begin to notice patterns. Certain projections repeat with different people, pointing to central themes in your shadow. It is as if the unconscious is continually orchestrating precisely calibrated encounters to bring up exactly what you need to see. And here is the transformation. When we begin to recognize our projections, they gradually lose their power over us. The outer world ceases to be a screen for unresolved psychic content and becomes a clearer reflection of reality. As Jung said, knowledge of oneself arises from relationship with others. By the end of these 10 days of attentive observation, you will begin to experience moments of surprising clarity, instances when in the midst of an emotional reaction you suddenly recognize, this is not about the other, it is about me. These moments of insight are the first signs of the promised transformation. After the first 10 days of recognizing projections, we arrive at a deeper, more challenging phase of shadow work, the direct encounter. Jung believed it was not enough to merely theoretically acknowledge shadow contents. We must establish a living relationship with them. What we resist persists, he wrote. What we fight strengthens. Those who avoid struggle remain weak. During the next 10 days of this process, you will initiate a conscious dialogue with your shadow. This is not mere metaphor or imagination. For Jung, it was a profoundly real process of confronting the autonomous personifications that inhabit the unconscious. As he himself practiced and documented in his Red Book, this inner dialogue can be astonishingly revealing. Begin by asking yourself, which aspects of myself do I find hardest to accept? The answer may come as an image, a bodily sensation, a memory, or a thought. Let this answer take shape, perhaps as a figure or character with whom you can converse. This inner figure may appear as a rival, an enemy, a seducer, a critic, or even an animal. The form does not matter. What matters is your willingness to make contact. As Jung said, the encounter with oneself is one of the most unpleasant encounters, but it is absolutely essential if we are to live without self-deception and self-delusion. A practical technique Jung developed for this dialogue is active imagination, a state of consciousness where we maintain a balance between being awake and dreaming. It is not consciously directing thoughts, nor passively surrendering to fantasy. It is creating a space where both parts of you, the conscious ego and the unconscious shadow, can meet and communicate. Set aside time each day for this dialogue. Sit in a quiet place, perhaps with a notebook to record the conversation. Begin by turning your attention inward, allowing the image of your shadow to emerge. Then, simply ask, who are you? What do you wish to show me? Allow yourself to be surprised by the answers. The shadow often speaks in paradoxes, images, and emotions that your rational mind may resist. As Jung observed, the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the entire personality. One of my patients, a successful executive, discovered during this exercise that his shadow appeared as a wild, dirty boy who accused him of abandoning joy and spontaneity in exchange for social recognition. Another found his shadow in the form of a sensual feminine figure, representing his repressed creativity and capacity for pleasure, which he had sacrificed in the name of duty. The most important part of this dialogue is not intellectually interpreting the symbols, but establishing a living relationship with these aspects of yourself. Ask your shadow, what do you need? What has been denied? How can I honor you without being dominated? This dialogue often reveals perplexing paradoxes. The shadow may demand both freedom and security, expression and boundaries. As Jung discovered, psychic opposites do not cancel each other out. They form a creative tension that generates energy for transformation. As this dialogue deepens over the days, you may notice subtle changes. Dreams become more vivid. Synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, may begin to occur. You may feel moments of strange familiarity with aspects of yourself that once seemed alien. This is the alchemical process Jung studied so deeply, the nigredo, or darkening phase, where we confront the raw material of our psyche. As the alchemist said, "In filth it shall be found, in the muck lies the gold." Do not expect this process to be comfortable. As Jung warned, there is no birth of consciousness without pain. But it is precisely this willingness to endure discomfort that creates space for rebirth. With each day of this dialogue, the inner walls that kept your psyche fragmented begin, gradually, to dissolve. We now arrive at the transformative heart of shadow work, the inner alchemy that transmutes psychic lead into gold. Jung, deeply inspired by the ancient alchemists, recognized that they were not merely attempting to transform literal metals, but encoding the process of psychic transformation. In the next 5 days of our 30-day work, we focus on integration, not just recognizing the shadow, not just dialoguing with it, but finding conscious ways to incorporate its energy into daily life. The shadow, Jung wrote, when accepted, reveals the path to the light. Every shadow quality contains at its core a vital energy that, when redeemed, becomes a precious resource. Anger, when transformed, becomes the ability to set healthy boundaries. Envy points to authentic desires we have not acknowledged. Wounded pride reveals where we need healing in our self-worth. This is a paradoxical truth Jung understood deeply. Our greatest wounds often hide our greatest gifts. What was repressed should not merely be released, but transformed, like water, which changes form while retaining its essence. A powerful example of this can be seen in our relationship with aggression. Many of us, especially those raised to be good and pleasing, repress assertive aspects, banishing them to the shadow. The result? Passivity, difficulty saying no, hidden resentment, or disproportionate outbursts when boundaries are crossed. The work of integration does not consist of denying this aggression or blindly expressing it, but recognizing it as a vital energy that can be consciously channeled. When integrated, this same energy becomes self-defense, clarity of purpose, and personal power. A technique Jung often recommended was finding symbolic expressions for shadow energies. A patient struggling with repressed anger found healing in practicing martial arts, a disciplined, ritualized way to honor aggression. A woman who repressed her sexuality rediscovered this energy through dance. A man who denied his vulnerability found expression through poetry. As Jung observed, the only path to wholeness is through symbols. Symbols create a bridge between the conscious and unconscious, allowing once repressed energies to find constructive expression. During these 5 days, ask yourself, how can I constructively honor what I have repressed? If you discovered your shadow contains anger, how can you use that energy to set healthy boundaries? If you found envy, how can you transform it into inspiration to cultivate qualities you admire in others? If you identified a merciless inner critic, how can you turn that sharp discernment into compassionate wisdom? Jung emphasized that integration is not elimination, but transformation. As he elegantly put it, again and again, I have observed that a person's individuality includes mysteries that are not revealed in the life of just one individual, but are left for future generations. In other words, some parts of our shadow contain not just personal material, but collective material, universal archetypes seeking expression through us. This process of integration often brings what Jung called the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to create a third position that transcends apparent opposites. Where there was once only conflict between consciousness and shadow, a creative synthesis now emerges, a broader, more integrated perspective. As you practice this integration, you may notice subtle shifts in your relationships. Where you once projected, you now see more clearly. Where you once reacted automatically, you now respond with awareness. As Jung observed, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. One of my patients, a severe perfectionist, discovered that her intolerance of others' mistakes reflected her own deep fear of failure. By integrating this aspect of her shadow, she not only developed more compassion for others, but also liberated a creativity that had been stifled by fear of imperfection. This is the alchemical gold Jung spoke of, not an idealized perfection, but a wholeness that embraces both light and darkness, virtues and flaws. As he wrote, consciousness does not come from being enlightened, but from contemplating our own darkness. In the final 5 days of our 30-day journey, we arrive at the ultimate destination of shadow work, the emergence of the authentic self. Jung carefully distinguished between the ego, our limited conscious identity, and the self, with a capital S, the regulating center of the total psyche, conscious and unconscious. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung wrote, is to become who you truly are. This becoming is not an artificial construction, but an unveiling, the removal of obstacles that prevent the natural expression of your wholeness. Shadow work culminates in this realization. As we integrate previously denied aspects of ourselves, the psychic energy once spent on repression is liberated. The result is not just freedom from the shadow's negative aspects, but access to previously inaccessible inner resources, creativity, vitality, deep intuition, and natural authenticity. This authenticity manifests as congruence between inner and outer, You cease being driven primarily by external approval or fear of rejection. Instead, your choices emerge from an authentic inner center, what Jung called the inner voice, or essential nature. As he observed, the individuality of the person is the secret within the secret, a mystery within the mystery. During these final 5 days, focus on living from this more authentic center. Ask yourself regularly, what would I choose to do if I were unafraid of judgment? How would I express myself if I were completely free from the need for approval? A remarkable sign of this transformation is a shift in your relationship with time. When we live divided, at war with parts of ourselves, we experience time as something to be filled or passed. But as we approach wholeness, time is experienced as an expansion of the present moment, a fullness, not a scarcity. As Jung realized, this shift is often reflected in our dreams. Early in shadow work, dreams typically reveal conflicts, chases, or threatening situations, reflections of our inner war. As integration progresses, new symbols emerge. Houses with previously unknown rooms, encounters with numinous figures, or images of reconciliation. A patient I worked with for a long time began his journey dreaming repeatedly of intruders in his house, clear representations of his unrecognized shadow. After months of inner work, his dreams transformed dramatically. In one particularly significant dream, he found an abandoned child in a basement who, when embraced, turned into radiant light. As Jung would say, this dream symbolized the recovery of long repressed vital aspects. Life beyond the mask brings what Jung called responsibility toward consciousness. We can no longer hide behind rationalizations or project our unwanted parts onto others. There is a radical honesty with oneself and others that, though sometimes uncomfortable, brings profound liberation. The acceptance of oneself, Jung wrote, is the essence of the moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. This acceptance is not passive resignation or indulgence in our flaws, but compassionate recognition of the totality of who we are, our light and shadow, strengths and vulnerabilities. One of the deepest paradoxes of this journey is that by fully accepting who we are, we create the psychological space necessary for genuine change. As long as we resist and reject, we remain stuck in the same patterns. Radical acceptance dissolves this stuckness, allowing natural flow. You may notice in these final days a sense of greater inner space, as if something that was compressed can now breathe freely. Relationships become more authentic, less determined by neurotic needs and more by genuine meeting. Creativity flows more naturally. Decisions arise with greater clarity. This is the true promise of shadow work. Not just the relief of symptoms or suffering, but the birth of an entirely new way of being. As Jung expressed it, I became what I was destined to be from the beginning. In his own individuation process, Jung discovered that shadow work eventually leads to something even deeper, the encounter with what he called the anima and animus, the contrasexual aspects of the psyche, and finally, with the archetypal self, often experienced as a numinous or divine inner presence. But that, as he would say, is another story, the next chapter in the soul's endless journey.